have you share your heart, your soul. I know you do it regularly, but
Yeah.
this is a most unusual setting we're in.
Yeah.
It will change the lives of our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, people who haven't even been thought of yet
Yeah.
to be born. It's for real. It's not a joke. It's
Yeah.
not politic talk. It's not spin. It's for real. So please take me down the road. I'm here to learn what to tell other people. So I'm now going to be quiet.
I don't need you to be quiet because I love hearing your passion and I love hearing your wife's passion when you all talk about politics, especially considering the era that you all come from, you know, what your youth represented. And this election or this Democratic National Convention has been compared a lot to the one from 1968, or people were concerned that there might be a repeat of that era, which I'm assuming you actually have memory of, you know, the
I was
confusion and the
doing milk
chaos.
commercials in Chicago on Wacker Drive during the convention.
Oh my God.
Yes. I've come a long way. My wife,
Wow.
Catherine Grody, who you are aware of,
Yeah.
she brought me up and my two sons, Isaac and Gideon, to have a political conscience.
Wow.
And our dear friend Martin Sheen, once when we were having lunch, I said, I just don't know if I'm political. And he said, do you breathe? I said, yes, I breathe. He said, well, the air you breathe is political.
Wow. Yeah, it's something I've had to come into as well. I don't know if my parents ever voted. I don't know if either of my parents, I know my mother most certainly never voted. My father became politically aware and started to care and understand that politics affected him, but I don't know that he ever actually cast a vote. So I did not grow up in a deeply
Right.
political household.
Were they involved in a religious
Yes.
organization?
My parents were ministers.
So
My father was a
that's the
minister.
world you understood.
Yes, yes. And so there was kind of that sense of, well, that's all very much out there. It doesn't
have that
affect
in
us.
common.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had to kind of come into an awareness myself of like, hey, this is in your hands. This is not something you observe from afar. Like it's all right to be active and involved. And even now, I hesitate sometimes to put that stuff out there because a lot of the folks on my socials and that follow me and my family and friends and people that I grew up with, it's very much looked down upon.
How did that seed get planted in you?
I think just growing up a little bit and sort of disconnecting a bit, deconstructing from that world a lot helped me to understand we're not just kind of waiting for the end of times to come. Like
Right.
we have to care about the world that we live in, and you know we have to care about the planet, and we have to, you know, plan for something beyond the rapture.
Yeah.
You know, being caught up, you know, in the air. And so once you realize like this life matters.
Right.
We're not just waiting for the afterlife. Once you start to realize that, you know, you're opened up, you know, in so many
Right.
ways.
Right.
And you begin to understand that our objective is not simply to dominate, you know, that's the verbiage we grew up with, to have dominion over the earth, you know, and to be fruitful and multiply. And that was pretty much all we understood our directive to be. But now it's like, hey, we're invested. You know, I care about what happens to the planet, and
Yeah.
you know, and I care about how people that I didn't grow up with are treated. You know, I care about my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, and
Yes.
you know, that's something that has to be ignited within you. So it's kind of new for me, you know, in
Yeah.
the past probably 10 years or so.
You're a preacher. You're good at it.
Thank you.
And
Come from a long line of preachers.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask you what your top 3 issues or concerns are in this moment, in this fight, in this most important election?
I think
Here.
probably, you know, as most people are concerned right now, I think just the preservation of democracy itself is really at the top of my mind, simply because of who the Republican candidate is. I think this is an unusual time simply because we have Donald Trump as a presidential candidate. And so I think it's just, it puts everything in a completely different space. I think we're not in that space of Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus liberal. I think we're literally having a conversation around, and I don't even really mean to be hyperbolic about it, but good versus evil. That's the way I perceive, you know, of what's going on right now. Reproductive rights are really important right now, as far as I'm concerned. I've done a lot of advocacy work for the first time ever. Like I said, I grew up in a very religious environment, and that was a no-no. You didn't talk about that. You didn't advocate for that.
Right.
And so kind of learning and understanding how abortion bans have impacted particularly Black women's health. You know, we suffer more than any other group when these bans are instated, and women are dying and babies are dying. And, you know, it's not as black and white as it was, as it was taught to me. So understanding more about reproductive rights, climate justice is really important as well. Environmental issues are very, very important to me as well. So really any issue that you could possibly reference or, think about, it's when I think about the contrast between these camps, it becomes very obvious, the choice, of where I choose to land, as a compassionate human being.
How I understand the energy of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and how it's ignited our party once again in an extraordinary way. But what do you say to people that have been exhausted by politics and exhausted by the rhetoric, by the lies, by the just all of it? It just spins your head around, and you stop. Before these past few weeks, when everything changed, when you just couldn't hear anymore, that you just couldn't take any more of it, when you didn't have it, when you just didn't have the energy. What do you say to people to get them to attend, be there, wake up?
That has been the focus of most of my content since I started speaking out. And I started speaking out right around 2020, and that was when, the world was going crazy, as it kind of is now, with the George Floyd murder and Breonna Taylor, and of course the pandemic, and then all of the election stuff happened, and just the world was exploding around me. And it was really one of those moments where I had to wake myself up. I had to shake myself up. I definitely understood what I believed and what I was passionate about. But I'm a singer by trade. That's what I do. And so I had to ask myself, is my audience going to be okay with this? Are they going to be all right with me speaking up? Because this is different. I'm not accustomed to being in this space where I allow my opinions and my feelings to be known. And you got to kind of dip your toe in the water and decide to be okay with disappointing the people that are going to be disappointed. That was one of the things I had to come to terms with. Just be okay with disappointing people. There are people that are going to fall off, and they're not going to be okay with you talking about these things. But we have all got to reach inside and find that humanity that allows us to really plug into these foundational issues of really good versus evil. And when a lot of times when people like me, who have been really heavily indoctrinated with religion, we have that stuff piled on top of us. And I'm not talking about pure faith, okay? When we have been inundated with that, then it can be a very confusing thing to understand right from wrong when we're observing the political landscape. It's like, well, I've been told this team is good, this team is bad, and if you agree with that, then we don't talk to you, and that's evil, and we shut down. And it causes a lot of confusion.
Hard to get away from the shackles from the dinner table.
Yes, it causes a lot of divestment, and I see that in a lot of my family members and friends. So I empathize with that, and have to remind myself that that can be a very confusing space to live in. But bringing things down to just that bedrock of right and wrong, good versus evil, even if we're just reading the words in red, the words of Jesus himself, when we really focus on those words, understanding what is right and what is wrong and what we're facing politically right now, it's not difficult to parse out if we really allow ourselves to kind of strip away those layers of propaganda and indoctrination. And that can be hard. And I have to be empathetic to that.
What did Jesus say about right and wrong?
He said, love your neighbor. He said, be good to those who have done you wrong. He said, take care of the widows and the fatherless and people who are afflicted. My grandmother was someone who worked with the homeless. She was someone who took care of people who had nothing. They had nothing to give her, nothing to offer her. And I don't see any of that consciousness in someone like Donald Trump. And it's really, for me, as I said, beyond Republican versus Democrat. We're talking about issues of humanity. And so, when you boil it down to just that raw essence, the decision before us is not difficult. It is not a difficult.
Kindness to a fellow human being.
Yes.
Here, there, and everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. So, those are very easy decisions. So your progression with speaking out, how did that happen? I mean, I've loved your content since I first realized that you were even online at all. I love your work, period. But you're a beacon for those of us who are speaking out. And there are not a lot of folks, I hope this doesn't come off in any particular way, but there are not a lot of folks in your age group, in the boomer age group, who are doing what you're doing in the way that you are doing it. So what's the role that you are interested in playing in this political climate? Do you see yourself as being? I see you as being essential right now. How do you see what you and your wife are doing right now?
Well, I'm a student of my wife, not wives, wife. She's my life teacher and my political teacher of my two sons and me. I didn't even know whether my parents, like you, voted Republican or Democrat. They were, men's club sisterhood of the synagogue. And so she was shocked that I didn't know that. But she brought me up politically and then brought our children up around the dinner table. And then it just one thing after another, this cause and that cause came up and gave me a life that I never imagined as an actor. I set out to be an actor, and then all these other things happened. I'm shooting Homeland in Berlin, and the refugees are crossing the Balkan route to try to get refuge in Germany, of all ironic places. And those are my family. Those are my children. Those, how do you help? I want to just walk and sit with them, and she woke us up as a family, and she runs the show, and then she has passed that baton to our children, Gideon and Isaac, to do the work and guide us. And as people know on social media, they can hear Gideon's voice.
Yeah.
They know he's part of the frame. Whether you see him or not, he's the glue that binds the family's future together, because he has the energy when we're too tired to go on at times. And he goes, "No, you're not. Come on, work to do.
That's just because I'm a bit younger.
Yeah, he's younger, but that's a major part of it. What I always ask Gideon or my son Isaac or my daughter-in-law Lennon, what do you want to come out of my mouth? What do you want to come out of my mouth?
In this exact moment that we're in, considering who our nominee will be, who our presumptive nominee is. This is our first Black female presidential nominee. And so I put out a video when Biden first stepped down, and I said, this is very instructive for me, because as a Black woman, it wasn't that I didn't think Kamala could do the job. It was that I didn't think that other people thought that Kamala could do the job. And so hearing that confidence, that reassurance coming from people who don't look like me, especially coming from a white man, when I hear that, it is surprisingly moving and affecting to me, because it speaks to me and it speaks about me. It speaks about your belief that I am capable in whatever it is that I set out to do. So I guess that I was confronted with my own sense when I saw her being elevated in the way that she was, which absolutely shocked me. It confronted my own sense of that limitation that I put on myself, and my expectation of the outside world for what you all believe that we can do, which really shouldn't matter like it does, but it does.
But Joe Biden gets credit for being our teacher, because what would have
and it took that.
What would it have said had he not
skipped her? Yeah.
Had he passed her over?
Yeah.
What would that have meant?
Yeah.
And he knew it when he chose her to be his vice president. He knew that he was questioning whether or not, after loss of his son, he had the energy to do this, but because of Charlottesville and what happened there, and he knew he had to step up, and he knew the responsibility of that appointment then.
Yeah.
And
then she hit it out of the park.
She did, and it feels so natural at this point. It feels like, well, of course, that's how it feels at this point. But yeah, hearing folks outside of my own demographic address the issue of race, address the issue of gender, and lean right into that, and speak about it from an historical point of view, talking about people like Shirley Chisholm, talking about the impact that race has had on your own life, talking about the impact that Black women have had on you, and I guess in a non-condescending sort of way, but just your own personal experience and your own passion around that. that actually
A
is
black
speaks.
woman gave me my voice. Lena McClin, a reverend at Kenwood High School in the south side of Chicago.
Oh wow.
I was in the choir. She led the choir. And I got up to sing something. And I didn't sing it loud like some of the other incredible people in the class in high school. And she literally looked at me and I said, "Oh, Miss McClin, I'm sorry." She said, "Child, you use that voice. Anybody tells you not to use that voice, you haven't come see Lena." And I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
My whole life, that African American woman
Yeah.
gave me my freedom.
Wow.
There's been so much talk about freedom. It comes from so many places when you're not even paying attention to it. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what black people did in this country.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just it's time. It's time, and it's never been more necessary.
Yeah.
It's not politics. It's about being alive. It's about being human beings. It's about morality. I have no ability to remember statistics or facts or even the list. I mean, I can remember. I can like go down some of the lists of the most important things, but I respond to a person's energy, to a person's nature. That's the person I want to have take care of the world for my new grandson, who's 2.5, and my new granddaughter, who will be 2 weeks old this coming Saturday. I want that granddaughter to grow up in a world where she'll go like, "Well, what do you mean a man can be president?" Is that allowed?